We are ready to add the division feature to this basic or simple calculator. Let's look at the menu items and add one line here, print, and that will be option 4, division. And we put an I there, here you go. So now we can see that option 4 will be for division. However, we need to be able to handle it within our nested if statement structure here. As you can see here, we only have 1, 2, 3, and 10 being handled appropriately. And anything below 1 or anything above 10 will produce an invalid choice, right? So that was the way we've designed the selection of any of these features. And as we can see here, 4 is not programmed into the selection, so we're going to have to do that. But prior to that, maybe it's a good idea, even before we do that, to define the division function. So let's go ahead and do it right above the menu. Okay, you can put it anywhere you want as long as you do it above main. So that's the point here. And I usually like the menu to be right above main because that's where I'm going to be strategizing as to how my application will end up looking. So here I put all my operations, stack them up in here. So now I'm going to define division. Okay, and I'm going to make it self-contained, so it's not going to need any arguments. So there is no parameter list for this. And it will not return anything. So basically, I'm just going to put a pass for now. And remember, this means no operation. This by itself means this function is well defined and we're good to go. It doesn't do anything, but that gives us a chance to call it from here, even if it doesn't do anything, and structure the code within main properly so we can actually call the division when we're prompted to do so. So the place to put it is right here in the nested else after 3. Why? Because if it's not 2, is it 3? If it's not 3, is it 4? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do if option equals 4, right? And then we're going to call basically division. So division right here. But if it isn't, we're going to do an else here. And then I am going to tab all of this. Now notice the red squiggly line. This block here belongs to that else. There. Okay? So now we know division doesn't do anything. So if we run it and we select 4, nothing's going to happen. And we say 4, and notice we're back to main menu, and that's because the function division really has nothing. It's a no operation with a pass. Now we're going to do something about it. So let me go ahead and do 10. Right, so we're out. It's always good to terminate your program properly so you don't have any issues. So now with division, I'm going to introduce a couple tricks here. We're going to do one with if statement. Right? Why? Because we don't want to divide by 0, right? So if you have a fraction, for example, the denominator should not be 0. Then we're going to do it with an if statement, as I said, but then I'm going to reintroduce to you again how to do it with exception handling. So let's go ahead and do it with an if statement. First, you're going to need 2 numbers, one to divide by the other, right? So, and we're going to choose that there are going to be floats. So num1 equals, and we're going to typecast to a float, and we're going to do an input function because we know the input function enters a string. We convert that to a float and we store it in num1. So enter, if it's a fraction, we could say numerator if you want. So if you want to see it as a fraction, which is really a division, we can do that. And then we can ask for the denominator. So num2, or what we're dividing by, equals float input, enter the denominator. Okay, so if you want to see it as a fraction, you could do that. Okay, so now only if the denominator is not 0 then you will accomplish the division. So you're going to have to test num2 to make sure that it's not 0. If num2 is not equal to 0, 0.0 is what we call right here a float right here. So if it's not equal to 0, then go ahead and do the division. Result equals num1 divide, so you use the division operator, num2. And then we can print result. We're going to fix this where we're going to round it up as well, equals, and then result. With the else, if you want, you can print an error message, print error division by 0. You can do something like that. All right, well, let's go ahead and test it out. We know that we're going to be calling this function when we pick option 4, right? So this is the function call right here. It's going to execute this block of code right here. And notice we don't need to return anything. We don't need any argument values here, so we don't have a parameter list at all because it's all self-contained. It does all the input and the output right here. Okay. Now, some programs might require that you don't do that, like this one, like the multiplication. So read carefully what your client wants you to do. Okay. So or your project manager. So at this stage, we're doing this for learning purposes. You're seeing different flavors on how to use functions. So let's go ahead and do division now. So let's go ahead and pick 4 now. And notice now it's asking me for the numerator, 12.3. And the denominator, let's say it's 6.1. And we can see the result here of 2.0 something. We can round it up if you want. And we're back to menu. Let's try to divide by 0 this time. So go ahead and do a 4. Numerator is 34.6, and let's go ahead and try to divide by 0. And you can see here error division by 0. So the if statement catches it, right? And we're within the else block of the if statement because indeed this isn't true, right? Because it is 0. Remember that not equal to. So we're going to go through these comparisons. This is the opposite of equal equal, right? So we've seen equal equal right here when we're comparing, right? Comparing. This is equality. Is option 4? Yes, do this. If not, do something else. Here it's saying, is num2 not 0? If it's true, you're going to do this block, which is go ahead and divide and print to the screen. If it isn't, then go ahead and print 0. If it isn't true, that means num2 is indeed 0. Okay? So as you can see here, this is working fine. So when our next lesson, I'm going to change all this where we're going to do exception handling. We're going to catch the fact that if you have a division by 0, what's going to happen if you don't have an if statement, your program will crash. Okay, so how can we catch it so we don't have to crash the program every time? A division by 0 will crash your program, right? So this here allows me to filter that out and not for it not to happen. So in our next lesson, I am going to crash it on purpose, and then we're going to have some sort of a statement there to recover before you crash or to catch it before you crash. By the way, can I round up the result before? Let's go ahead and do that. Equals result. We've done this before. Dot. And we've done the round, right? So let's go ahead and just leave it the way it is. Let's see what it does. And let's go ahead and divide. Let's pick 4. divide 12.3 by 7.3. And as you can see here, rounded it up to 2. Okay. Let's see here. Let's say we didn't do round, and we're going to use the same numbers, 12.3 and 7.3. But I need to end the program for that to take effect. Okay. So again, 12.3 and 7.3. So let's run it again. And we're going to pick 4. So 12.3 and 7.3 without rounding. And notice here we have 1.68949. So what happens is it's going to go through all of this, right? And it will end up rounding it. And so 1.9 is almost 2. If you were to round this, and that's what you have. Now, if you were to round it to, let's say, 2 decimal points, let's see what happens. Again, I have to end the program for this to take effect and then run it again. Okay, so it doesn't do it on the fly, so you have to be really careful. And let's do it again, 12.3 divided by, oops. All right, I didn't use 12.3. And yet there you have it. 13.3 divided by 7.3 is fine. It will work as well, right? So at least it tries to round it up to 2 decimal points. So we're good there. So let's go ahead and hit 10 exit. So our next lesson, I'm going to modify this division where we're not going to use an if statement, but we're going to use some sort of an exception handling to catch a potential error before the program crashes because we're trying to divide by 0. That's going to give us a lot more flexibility than if statements in the future, especially later on where we're ready to handle files or the processing of a lot of things that could crash your application. So if statements may not be appropriate sometimes, definitely exception handling will be very, very useful. So stay tuned for our next lesson on that topic.